Hello! If you like stories like this, subscribe to this channel to not miss new videos.
It was past midnight when I heard the soft buzz. At first, I thought it was mine, buried somewhere under the pile of laundry on the chair. But no, the glow came from Daniel's jacket pocket, carelessly tossed onto the couch. He never left his phone unattended. Never. I froze, staring at it as if it were alive. My heart thudded against my ribs, whispering a warning. Don't touch it. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. The screen lit up again. A single message. I miss you already. Same time next week? My throat closed. I stood there, staring, the world shrinking into that one glowing rectangle. The phone buzzed again. This time a heart emoji. Red. Intimate. A digital whisper meant for someone who wasn't me? I should have put it down, pretended I never saw. But in that moment, I knew. My life had just split in two, and I couldn't unknow what I had just seen. The phone was back in Daniel's pocket by morning. He came into the kitchen yawning, smelling of cologne instead of sleep. His hair was wet, showered already, unusual for him. "Early start?" I asked, my voice steady, though my hands trembled against the coffee mug. He smiled too quickly. "Big meeting, long day ahead." I studied his face. His eyes didn't meet mine. The phone was face down on the table beside his plate. It had never been there before. Normally, he scrolled through news while eating, careless, distracted. But now it sat there like a guarded secret. "Long day," I repeated softly, forcing a smile. "You forgot your phone last night." The fork paused mid-air. His hand gripped it too tightly. "Oh, yeah, I was exhausted. Must have slipped my mind." He laughed, but it was hollow. A small part of me wished I could believe him, that the text I saw had been a misunderstanding, some colleague, some late-night work chatter, but the way his shoulders stiffened told me everything. He noticed my gaze lingering on the phone. Slowly, casually, he reached out, sliding it closer to him, as though afraid it might leap into my hands again. And in that moment, I knew. He was already building walls between us. That week, I started to watch him the way a stranger watches shadows in an alley. Cautious, suspicious, waiting. He worked late. Again. He answered calls in the hallway. Again. He left the room with the phone glued to his hand, as though afraid I might catch another glimpse of his private world. One night, while he showered, I heard it buzz again. I wasn't even searching for it. The sound pulled me like a hook. The message preview lit up. "Can't stop thinking of last night. You felt different, dangerous, mine." My stomach flipped. Dangerous, mine. Words that had never been spoken to me, not in years of marriage. I should have confronted him right there, but fear paralyzed me. Fear of what confirmation would mean. Fear of no longer being the innocent wife who didn't know. So I set the phone back down before he stepped out, pretending I hadn't seen a thing. But the silence between us grew louder. By the end of the second week, Daniel felt like a guest in our home. He still kissed me goodbye, still asked about dinner, still laughed at the TV in the evenings, but it was all rehearsal. The warmth was gone, like he was playing the part of husband for show, while the real Daniel was somewhere else. His eyes betrayed him most. Once, they had looked at me like I was the center of his world. Now they flickered past me, restless, distracted, always searching for something else. On Saturday, we were invited to dinner with friends. I dressed in the red dress he used to love. I watched his face carefully when I stepped out of the bedroom. Beautiful, he said, without looking up from tying his shoes. Beautiful. Flat. Automatic. A word spoken not to me, but to the air. That night, across the dinner table, I caught him smiling at his phone under the tablecloth. A secret grin, sharp and alive, the kind of smile I hadn't seen directed at me in years. And in that grin, I saw her, whoever she was. I saw her stealing the man who used to be mine. I began keeping notes, dates, times, excuses. It felt insane, but I needed proof, not just of what he was doing, but that I wasn't losing my mind. Tuesday, late meeting. Phone buzzed at midnight. Thursday, drinks with colleagues. Shirt smelled faintly of perfume. Saturday, slipped out for a drive after a call. Came back smiling. I never confronted him. Not yet. Instead, I built my quiet case, piece by piece, like a detective in my own marriage. But suspicion eats you alive from the inside. I jumped when his phone buzzed. I checked my reflection, wondering what she had that I didn't. I started sleeping on the edge of the bed, his back always turned toward me. One night, unable to stand the silence, I whispered into the bark, "Daniel, do you love me?" He shifted. His breath caught. For a moment, I thought he'd answer honestly. "Of course I do," he said softly, his hand brushing mine. But his touch was cold, and I knew the words were nothing but plaster, trying to cover the cracks in our foundation. The house grew lonelier, even with Daniel still in it. He was present, but only in body. At night, when he thought I was asleep, I could feel the glow of his phone seeping through the cracks of the darkness. His breath would hitch, a low chuckle escaping now and then. Words meant for someone else spilled softly into the room. I lay still, frozen, listening, not daring to move, not daring to breathe too loudly. Sometimes he whispered words I hadn't heard in years. "Miss you. Can't wait. You're perfect." I closed my eyes, pretending to sleep, while those words carved themselves into me like knives. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal. It was hearing the version of him I used to know, tender, passionate, alive, but given to someone else. During the day, Daniel grew more careful. He laughed louder, complimented me more often, even offered to cook once or twice. To anyone else, it would have looked like a husband in love, but it was too polished, too rehearsed. The small mistakes gave him away. He called me by the wrong name once, a slip of the tongue quickly covered. He smiled at his phone the way he used to smile at me. He wore cologne on nights he claimed he'd be working late. And yet, sometimes he looked at me with guilt in his eyes, as though begging me not to ask, not to shatter the fragile stage he'd built for us both. I began to feel like an actress trapped in someone else's play, reading lines I didn't believe in anymore. The phone became the third person in our marriage. It was at the dinner table. It was in the bathroom. It even came to bed with us, glowing under his pillow. Once, while folding laundry, I saw it lying unattended on the dresser. My heart raced, palms sweating. The chance was right there, to look, to know. But fear stopped me. Because once you open that door, you can't close it again. Instead, I watched him snatch it up minutes later, as if sensing danger. He clutched it like a lifeline, slipping it into his pocket without meeting my eyes. That night, as I lay awake, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just afraid of losing him. I was afraid of finding out I already had.
Sunday morning used to be ours. Coffee in bed, newspapers sprawled across the blanket, sunlight filtering through curtains while Daniel teased me about my crossword addiction. But now, he scrolled his phone instead. He smiled, that sharp, secret smile, at a screen I couldn't see. I asked him what was funny. "Just a meme from work," he said quickly, flipping the phone over, hiding it face down. The lie landed like a stone in my chest. He never hid memes before. I watched him laugh again, quietly, when he thought I wasn't looking. And the truth hit me harder than I expected. The smile that once belonged to me, the smile that once lit up my whole world, wasn't mine anymore. Daniel was slipping. He ironed his shirts more carefully, as though someone else's eyes would be tracing the lines of his collar. He shaved on nights he claimed to be working late. And once, I found a receipt for 2 glasses of wine tucked into his jacket pocket, from a bar we'd never been to. When I asked about it, his answer was too fast, too smooth. "Oh, that? Client meeting. You know how it is." I nodded, but my heart clenched. Because Daniel was never the kind of man to keep receipts. He tossed them away like useless scraps. So why did this one, out of all the others, make it into his pocket? Almost as though he wanted to keep it. Almost as though it meant something. That night, I woke to the sound of his voice again. Soft, careful, sweet in a way he hadn't been with me in years. I turned slowly, peeking through half-closed eyes. The glow of his phone illuminated his face, younger somehow, alive in a way that felt foreign. "I'll see you soon. Can't wait." My throat closed, my body froze. I didn't dare move, didn't dare breathe, afraid he'd know I'd heard him. When he finally slipped the phone under his pillow and turned his back to me, I stared at the ceiling, fighting the tears burning at the edges of my eyes. I wanted to scream, to shake him, to demand answers, but I stayed silent, because silence was safer than the truth. The cracks were widening. Daniel's lies were piling up faster than he could cover them. Every night, every excuse, every forced smile chipped away at the fragile mask I wore. One evening, while he showered, I stood before the bathroom door, listening. The faint sound of his voice drifted through the steam, low and careful, talking, laughing, not alone. He wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. He carried her with him everywhere, into our mornings, our dinners, even our bed. And standing there, trembling, I realized something I had been avoiding all along. This wasn't just about suspicion. It wasn't just about whispers or shadows. My husband was in love with someone else. By then, I had stopped recognizing my own husband. He still looked like Daniel, still moved like him, still carried the same scent of cologne that once meant comfort. But there was a new shadow stitched to him. It followed us into every room, every silence, every half-smile he gave me. Sometimes, when his phone buzzed in his pocket, I would catch a flicker of panic in his eyes before he masked it. That flicker was enough. Enough to tell me he was living 2 lives. And in one of them, I didn't exist. One night, over dinner, Daniel reached across the table and took my hand. For a fleeting second, I thought, hoped, that he was going to tell me everything. His thumb brushed mine, his eyes glassy with something like guilt. "I know I've been distracted," he said. My heart thudded against my ribs. This is it. But then he smiled too quickly and added, "Work's just been hell lately." The lie stung worse than if he'd said nothing at all, because I saw the confession hovering at the edges of his lips and watched him bury it alive. The doubt became unbearable. So, one evening, when Daniel said he was heading to the office, I waited, counted the minutes, then slipped on my coat and followed him. I parked a few streets away, heart racing as I watched his car. He wasn't going to the office. I knew it. Sure enough, he turned down a different road. I followed at a distance, headlights off, hands trembling against the wheel. When he pulled up to a dimly lit restaurant, I saw him straighten his collar in the mirror. He got out, scanning the street like a man with something to hide. And then she appeared, a silhouette stepping into the glow of the restaurant's sign. Tall, elegant, familiar in a way that made my stomach drop, though I couldn't yet place her. Daniel smiled, wide, genuine, unguarded, the smile that hadn't been mine in years. They walked inside together, her hand brushing against his. My breath hitched. My hands were slick with sweat against the steering wheel. Through the glass, I caught a glimpse as she tilted her head, laughing at something he said. The light hit her face, and the world tilted on its axis. It wasn't just anyone. It wasn't a stranger. It was someone I knew. Someone I had trusted. I pressed myself against the cold leather of the car seat, my breath fogging the windshield as I stared into the restaurant. Her laugh carried, even muffled through the glass, like a cruel echo from a life I thought I understood. That tilt of her head, that familiar, easy way she leaned in when she listened. And then it hit me. Not a stranger, not a coworker, not some nameless woman who had stolen my husband's attention. It was Clara, my best friend. The woman who had sat on this very couch, sipping wine with me, rolling her eyes at Daniel's workaholic habits, telling me I deserved better. The woman who held my hand when I miscarried 2 years ago. The woman I called sister when my own blood felt too far away. Her. She was the smile in his pocket. She was the voice in his whispers. She was the reason my marriage had been bleeding from wounds I couldn't see. I clutched the steering wheel, the world tilting violently around me. Every memory of her, of us, splintered under the weight of betrayal. Clara hadn't just taken my husband. She had stolen the one thing I thought was unshakable: trust. And in that moment, watching them together, laughing in the glow of a restaurant I had never been invited to, I realized something even darker. I hadn't just lost Daniel. I had lost her. I drove home in silence, but inside me there was nothing silent at all. There was screaming, shattering, the sound of every memory I had with Clara tearing itself to pieces. I sat in the driveway long after Daniel returned, long after his headlights swept over the front of the house. He walked in casually, whistling, carrying the scent of a woman who wasn't me. I watched from the dark interior of my car, invisible, unseen. And for the first time in our marriage, I realized I wasn't afraid of losing him. I was afraid of what I might do. The next morning, Clara's name lit up my phone like a curse. A text. "Hey, love, we should grab coffee soon. Miss you." I stared at the heart at the end of the message until the screen dimmed. Her words felt like acid, sweetened poison, typed with hands that had touched my husband only hours before. When I entered the kitchen, Daniel was already there, sipping coffee, reading the paper as though nothing had changed, as though I hadn't seen him with her.
I wanted to throw the mug against the wall, to scream his name until the truth spilled out of him. But instead, I smiled. I poured my coffee. I pretended. Because now, I wasn't just a wife. I was a ghost, haunting the kitchen with knowledge neither of them believed I had. The betrayal burned through me in waves. Grief, rage, despair, disbelief. But beneath it all, something colder was beginning to grow. Clara had stolen my husband, my trust, my peace. And Daniel, the man I once believed would never lie to me, had handed it to her willingly. They thought they were clever, careful, untouchable. But I had seen enough. And now, every smile I gave, every casual nod, every kiss on the cheek before he left for work was no longer born of love. It was strategy. It was patience. It was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Because when I confronted them, it would not be quietly. It would not be small. It would be a reckoning.
It was a Saturday evening when I set the trap. I told Daniel Clara had invited me over for dinner, just us girls like old times. He smiled too quickly, muttered something about, "Great, you should catch up," before kissing my cheek. Instead, I invited both of them. Daniel thought he was heading to Clara's for an emergency chat. Clara thought she was hosting me for wine and laughter. Neither of them expected to find me waiting, alone, at my own dining table, candles lit, 2 glasses of untouched red wine already poured. When Daniel walked in and froze, followed by Clara a minute later, the silence was louder than any scream I could have made. "Sit," I said, my voice sharper than the knife glinting from the counter behind me. Daniel tried to laugh, tried to make it casual. "What's going on here?" Clara stood stiff, her face pale, her hand twitching against her coat pocket. "You tell me," I whispered, "since you seem to share so much these days." Daniel's eyes widened, darting to Clara, then back to me. Clara's lips parted, but no sound came. The silence between them was the only confession I needed. "You could have chosen anyone," I spat, looking at Clara. My voice trembled, but my words were knives. "You chose him, my husband, my life, my trust." Daniel reached for me, desperate. "It wasn't—" "Don't," I snapped, slamming my palm against the table so hard the glasses rattled. Both of them flinched. And in that moment, I realized the truth. I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't begging. I wasn't broken. I was done. I stood over them, the shattered glass glinting on the floor like the pieces of my old life. "You think you've been careful," I said, my voice low, steady. "You think sneaking around, meeting in shadows, deleting messages makes you clever. But Daniel," I turned to him smiling like a blade, "you left your phone at home last week. And Clara," my eyes burned into hers, "you were sloppy enough to leave your lipstick in his car." Daniel paled. Clara flinched. "I know everything. Every hotel, every excuse, every whisper." I leaned forward, my voice breaking into a sharp laugh. "And I've already sent copies of your texts to both your offices, to your families, to every person who thought the two of you were oh so innocent." Clara gasped. Daniel surged forward, desperate, furious. "You didn't—" "Oh, I did." The weight of it hit them both at once. Daniel's career, ruined. Clara's reputation, obliterated. Their secret world, their stolen paradise, turned to ash in seconds. "Was it worth it?" I asked softly, stepping back toward the doorway. "Was destroying me worth destroying yourselves?" Daniel dropped to his knees, his voice cracking. "Please, don't do this!" But I was already gone. Gone from the house, gone from the marriage, gone from the person who thought love was enough to keep betrayal from seeping in. I left them in silence, choking on the rubble of what they had built behind my back. Months later,
I stood in my own apartment, sunlight spilling across new walls, a glass of wine in my hand. Clara had vanished from town in disgrace. Daniel was a ghost, a man stripped of everything he thought made him powerful. And me? I wasn't broken anymore. I hadn't just survived the fire. I had become it. And fire doesn't weep.
Hello! If you like stories like this, subscribe to this channel to not miss new videos.